The movie begins with two astronauts working on a satellite in the vast expanse of space. As they perform their tasks, they engage in lighthearted banter, exchanging jokes and teasing each other. Suddenly, their conversation is interrupted by an unexpected sound and a blinding light. Startled and alarmed, they scream and instinctively cover their ears, their expressions reflecting shock and fear. The scene shifts to three guys, Charlie, Rob, and Brendan, driving to pick up two girls, Annie and Kara, for a weekend trip to a remote cottage in the woods. They reach the girls' house, get them in the car, and continue their journey. As they stop for gas, the friends step out of the car except for Charlie, who stays behind listening to music. Annie joins him, handing him a snack and asking if he's okay. Charlie, lost in thought, admits he has a lot on his mind but doesn't want to talk about it, so Annie leaves him alone. Meanwhile, Brendan wanders around, taking pictures of their surroundings. Suddenly, he notices blood on the back of a nearby car. As he examines it, he's attacked by a man who mistakes him for a reporter. Despite Brendan's attempts to explain that they just stopped for gas, the man remains hostile. He uncovers the back of his car, revealing the carcass of a deceased animal. Charlie, looking for Brendan, sees the man holding him with his hands behind his back. He tries to calm the man down, eventually convincing him to release Brendan. The two friends rush back to their car and drive away. As they speed off, Brendan recounts the terrifying encounter with the man to the rest of the group. The group reached their destination and went inside, carrying their bags. They marveled at the beauty of the cottage. Brendan, Annie, and Charlie went outside so Brendan could set up his photography equipment while Kara and Rob stayed behind. Outside, Brendan began setting up his cameras, and Charlie and Annie started walking. Annie asked Charlie about a girl she saw pictures of on his phone. They then admired a nearby waterfall, complimenting its beauty. Brendan called them over to show them an old cabin he had spotted. Annie led the way, and they followed her inside. They were shocked to find a collection of frozen animals. As they explored, Annie suddenly started coughing hard and took out her inhaler, reassuring them she was okay. Brendan then noticed a picture on the wall and recognized it as the man from the gas station. They saw various pictures of him in an astronaut suit and military uniform. As they were discussing this, they heard a car approaching. The man from the gas station stepped out. They quickly hid in another room, but the man soon realized someone was inside. The friends managed to escape through a window, but the man got into his car and chased them. As they ran, Charlie fell, but Annie helped him up, and they continued running. They made it back to the house and were about to tell Kara and Rob when Kara stopped them, pointing out a heavy storm spreading in the sky. Annie and Charlie went outside and saw the ominous storm forming above. A group of scientists gathers as Dr. Lawrence presents photos from the Condon Committee's investigation into Project Blue Book, which concluded in 1969. Despite the project's end, pilots have continued to report similar experiences over the years. Dr. Lawrence then requests Romanovich to be brought in, and he enters the room in handcuffs. Colonel McAllen asked Romanovich to share the story he wanted to tell previously. Rob informs Charlie that he found something wedged between the positive terminal and the frame, which had shorted out the battery. Charlie, realizing who might be responsible, explains that they earlier discovered an abandoned cabin that belonged to the strange man who had confronted Brendan at the gas station earlier. Charlie concludes that this man is now targeting all of them. Rob advises Charlie not to mention this to the girls, as they don't want anyone ruining their vacation. Back at the scientists' meeting, they received a message indicating that visitors were approaching the area. Romanovich warned them that while they couldn't stop the visitors, they could make preparations. Meanwhile, at the cottage, Charlie and Anne were talking about his girlfriend. He revealed that she hadn't broken up with him, she had died. In another room, Kara and Rob were kissing when her mom called, interrupting their moment. The hunter, the man targeting the group, was seen preparing his tools while watching TV. He sharpened his equipment and then left, carrying them with him. A loud and intense storm was brewing in the area. The hunter, observing it through binoculars, saw a green light descending from the sky. Suddenly, he began having seizures. Simultaneously, Romanovich also experienced the same seizures. After recovering, Romanovich told the others that the visitors knew he was there. They assured him he was safe, but he insisted he wasn't worried about himself. Back at the cottage, Kara got up and looked out the window, noticing red storms in the sky. She turned and Rob called her, but she remained unresponsive and then suddenly collapsed. Brendan, monitoring the cameras he had set up, spotted the hunter snooping near their cottage and alerted the others. Rob headed to his car to retrieve a gun. On his way back, Rob encountered a sticky substance on the ground, and upon closer inspection, saw a creature growling underneath. Panicked, he ran back to the cottage. The group questioned him, but he dismissed it as nothing. Kara looked out the window and saw a red glow. As a figure approached the window, they retreated and turned off the lights, then started discussing their next move. Rob, disagreeing with Charlie's plan, called him a coward, leading to a brief fight that stopped when Kara felt unwell. Suddenly, they heard a noise, and Anne, Brendan, and Charlie went to investigate. They found a red glowing object floating outside. While trying to figure out what it was, Rob joined them and instructed them to unplug the car battery. Brendan and Anne headed to the garage while Charlie and Rob went to the living room. Seeing the red glowing object, Rob panicked and shot at it, accidentally hitting Kara. He then carried her to their car, but before they could leave, Kara died. As they panicked, Rob picked up his gun and pointed it at them, instructing the others to run into the forest to create a distraction. Suddenly, a red light appeared, and Charlie used the distraction to try and take the gun away from Rob. A struggle ensued, and Charlie managed to strike Rob, causing him to pass out. The three friends quickly ran to the car and started it. As they drove away, Rob suddenly appeared in the road, causing Charlie to swerve and crash the car. Rob approached with his gun, but a UFO appeared and abducted him while the others watched from the wreckage. The group fled into the forest, with Annie stopping to use her inhaler. They noticed something moving in the tree branches, and upon closer inspection, it moved, causing them to run away in fear. They found a hiding spot where Annie started treating Charlie's wounds. Suddenly, they heard Brendan screaming and discovered he was injured by a bear trap. Charlie tried to help him, but the trap was firmly stuck, and Brendan continued to scream in pain. They were in front of the hunter's cabin, so Annie went inside to use the radio to call for help. Charlie, hearing a sound from the woods, went to investigate with a tree branch for protection. The hunter arrived, disarmed Charlie, and then began to remove the trap from Brendan. Meanwhile, Annie managed to contact the US military on the radio and frantically explained their situation, giving their location and pleading for help. The military assured her that an extraction team was on the way and directed them to a nearby meeting point at Garrity Gulch. As Annie ended the conversation, she saw an alien in front of her and screamed, running back to the others. The hunter initially pointed his gun at her, but lowered it when he recognized her distress. Annie informed them that more aliens were present. The hunter helped Brendan up and guided them through the forest. Using his binoculars, the hunter spotted an alien and moved away to set up a trap. Annie told the group that help was on the way and they needed to meet the extraction team by the lake. Meanwhile, the hunter used flashlights to lure an alien into his trap. Successfully, he managed to trap the alien, then approached it, teasing it before shooting it. Charlie emerged from the woods, furious at the hunter for using them as bait. He attempted to punch the hunter, but the hunter struck him back. The group quickly entered the hunter's cabin. Inside, the hunter began treating Brendan's injury, giving him a drink and a stick to bite into before manipulating and bandaging his leg. Brendan passed out from the pain. Charlie then told Annie they needed to leave immediately. Annie asked what they would do about Brendan, and Charlie suggested stealing the hunter's car. They agreed that Annie would steal the keys while Charlie distracted the hunter. Charlie engaged the hunter in conversation, praising his work and trying to keep him occupied. During the conversation, the hunter, knowing that they were going to take the car, mentioned that the truck wouldn't work because the head gasket had blown and he had barely made it back home that afternoon. Realizing their plan to steal the truck was futile, Charlie asked if they could use the boat instead. The hunter confirmed that the boat was available and they decided to use it as their means of escape. The hunter laughed, prompting Annie to ask what was so funny. He explained that he didn't mean they should leave now, but at dawn, as sunlight interferes with the aliens' metabolism and slows them down. Charlie, frustrated and anxious, questioned if the hunter expected them to wait until dawn, asking what they would do in the meantime. The hunter, with a stern look, remarked that they'd be lucky to make it 50 yards out the door without getting caught. The hunter then began to share a deeply personal story. He recounted his experience from April 7th, 1995, vividly describing how he was sitting in the shuttle flight deck performing pre-launch checks when everything changed in an instant. He blinked and suddenly found himself face down in a desert 2,000 miles away, with no memory of how he got there or where he had been for the last 48 hours. The disorientation and fear were palpable as he detailed waking up in a strange deserted land. Over time, fragments of memories began to resurface, disjointed flashes of lights, sounds, smells, and tastes that haunted him. He revealed that Captain Romanovich and he had gone through the same ordeal. To emphasize his point, he showed them various marks on his body, explaining that these were how the aliens marked those who showed promise before making adjustments and upgrades. The hunter's tale grew more intense as he explained that the aliens had been conducting these test runs for the past 60 years hunters, taking 1 or 2 people at a time, all in preparation for tonight's mass abduction. Charlie, unable to believe what he was hearing, interrupted. Then the hunter started to move things on the table with his head to reveal the upgrade that was done on him. He shared that his understanding of these events didn't come easily. It took years of piecing together fragmented memories and discovering that he wasn't just himself anymore. He had neural implants that connected him to the aliens in ways he couldn't fully comprehend. He elaborated that the aliens had been visiting Earth for millennia, making adjustments to human evolution at key intervals. The first astronaut was a chimp, and the second was a dog, highlighting how humans use lesser species for experiments just as the aliens viewed humans. These adjustments, the hunter explained, were like upgrades, pushing human evolution forward each time they intervened. The hunter talked about how he had tried to warn people about the coming storm and the mass abduction. He had told everyone he could, but his warnings were dismissed as delusions or a transformation of his sense of reality. He recounted how the visitors had taken everything from him: his sense of self, his memories, his peace. Determined and resolute, the hunter declared that tonight he would return the favor. He was prepared to fight back against the aliens, using everything he had learned over the years to survive and protect those who were with him. The group, realizing the gravity of the situation, knew they needed to prepare for the coming storm and the imminent mass abduction. The hunter went outside to start setting traps around the cabin. Inside, Annie approached Charlie with a worried look, seeking reassurance that they would escape. Charlie, lost in thought, reflected on whether everything happens for a reason. He then began to recount the tragic incident involving his girlfriend. Flashbacks showed when he suddenly woke up to her screams. He had been thrown from the vehicle, but she was still pinned under the dashboard, desperately trying to free her amid smoke and chaos. He was helpless as the car exploded before he could save her. As Annie and Charlie were talking, the hunter returned, dragging the body of an alien behind him. He went into another room and closed the door. Annie began waking Brendan, telling him it was time to go. Meanwhile, Charlie noticed that the hunter was dissecting the alien. Suddenly, a loud noise and a bright light enveloped the cabin, forcing them to cover their ears. The hunter emerged from the room, instructing them to stay inside before heading out. As another light flashed, they realized Brendan was missing. Panic set in as they saw an alien walking into the house. Seizing the opportunity, they managed to escape the cabin and found the hunter outside. He told them to get behind him and began shooting at the approaching aliens. Handing them the keys to the boat, he urged them to go, explaining that the aliens were there for him and that they had unfinished business. The hunter acknowledged that they had just been in the wrong place at the wrong time. He advised them to leave while they still could. As Charlie and Annie ran through the forest, Charlie suddenly stopped, insisting they wait. He argued that the lake was too exposed and they would be safer in the trees. Annie, frustrated and desperate, reminded him that the lake was their designated meeting point. He questioned who he had spoken to on the radio, but Annie dismissed his concerns, urging him to trust him and insisting it would be fine. Charlie, grappling with his guilt, admitted he didn't want to lose her too. Annie reassured him that Rachel's death wasn't his fault and that he couldn't let it continue to haunt him. Despite her attempts to comfort him, Charlie remained fixated on his plan. Annie, determined and resolute, decided to head to the lake alone, leaving Charlie behind to make his own choice. At the boat, Annie's asthma flared up and she struggled to breathe. Charlie, hearing her distress, came running to help her. They both looked up to see an aircraft approaching, and Annie smiled, thinking it was the US Army she had contacted. However, as the aircraft got closer, they realized it was an alien ship. A beam of light emerged, engulfing Annie. Determined not to let go, Charlie hugged her tightly, and they were both abducted together. Charlie woke up submerged in a pool of blue liquid. Disoriented, he saw other red glowing objects around him as he navigated through the eerie environment. Hearing a scream, he followed the sound, hoping it was Annie. Instead, he found Brendan covered in tubes and some kind of alien skin. Charlie tried to free him, but became nauseous at the sight of the tubes and had to walk away. Continuing his search, Charlie found Kara and Rob in a pool filled with glowing liquid. Rob woke up and in a moment of clarity, apologized for his earlier behavior, acknowledging that he had lost control. He reassured Charlie that he was okay now, but noted that Charlie seemed afraid, sensing his thoughts. Rob didn't know where Annie was being kept, but then they heard Annie calling out to Charlie. Charlie found Annie in another pool of blue liquid. He tried to pull her out and saw that tubes were connected to her back. As he dragged her out, the tubes disconnected. Suddenly, an alien entered the room. Charlie quickly hid in the pool after grabbing a a blade. When the alien approached, he stabbed it, but the alien pushed him back into the pool. Charlie woke up again to find aliens conducting experiments on him. He screamed in pain and then passed out once more. When he woke up again, he saw a woman standing nearby. As she got closer, he realized it was his dead girlfriend, Rachel. He apologized to her and she reassured him that it was okay, telling him he needed to let go. However, this was a hallucination caused by the alien's experiments. The next morning, Charlie woke up naked in the woods with strange marks on his body. His clothes were neatly folded next to him. He dressed and began walking. Nearby, Annie also woke up, noticing similar marks on her body, and got dressed. They eventually found each other, but neither had any recollection of what had happened the previous night. Charlie then kissed Annie, and they walked back to the cottage together. At the cottage, they found Rob and Brendan already there. Shortly after, Kara arrived, and Rob went outside to greet her. Meanwhile, the scientists monitoring the situation received a notification that the alien craft was still ascending and had just lost visual contact. They were instructed to decrease their altitude and begin assisting ground patrols in scanning all areas of reported contact. It was confirmed that the visitors were leaving and that all the abducted individuals appeared to have been returned. As the group started driving, they encountered a military roadblock. The officer noticed the marks on their bodies and instructed them to step out of the vehicle. Suddenly, a soldier began shooting at them. In the chaos, all of them except Charlie were shot. Charlie managed to wrestle a gun away from a soldier, and using their alien-given enhancements, the group fought back, slaughtering the soldiers. The hunter arrived to help them in the fight. Charlie, Annie, and Brendan walked away, assuming Kara and Rob were dead. However, the bullet wounds on Kara healed rapidly, and she got up to heal Rob as well. The movie concluded with the three of them walking into the wood, seeing a storm descending, and realizing that their lives had been forever changed by their harrowing experience.